We're so glad you're here today. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mrs. Kristen Gephart. She is our lower school division head here at Bear Creek. She is passionate about Bear Creek's mission, and she loves how the intersection of faith and learning go together here. She is an observer of people, and she loves to see to help people discover how they are created and their strengths and gifts. And she firmly believes that when a community of adults come together, partner together, and invest in children's lives, that the impact is forever. Kristin earned a BA in speech communication from the University of Washington and a master's in teaching from Seattle University. So please join me in welcoming Kristen Gephart on the topic of how to raise kids who thrive.
Thanks. We can just sit on the side, Christy. Welcome! I'm so excited that you are all here. Good job getting out of the house. This is it's a big task. You did it. You made a plan, and you followed through, you executed, and it worked out. It doesn't always happen when we have children, does it? On a Saturday morning. So well done, well done. We're excited that you're here. I'd like to get to know a little bit about who we are in the audience. So raise your hand if you have children between the ages of 0 and 3 right now. Okay. Raise your hand if you have kids in that 4 to 5 range. Love it. How about the 6 to 7? Yay. And 7 to 8? Over 8? Awesome. Well, we're excited that you're here. Why don't you go ahead and turn to the person next to you and just tell them a little bit, we're going to try and do this a little bit more interactively because adult learning theory says that, hey, we don't have attention spans either, you know. So this is a long morning, but we want to get to know each other, and I'd love for the environment just to be that of learning. Like you're all here. I'm definitely not an expert, and I'll talk about that in a minute too as a parent. But turn to the person next to you and just say, why are you here? What drew you here? Go. All right, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds to wrap up your conversation. Oh, you guys are good. I didn't even have to count down my fingers like we do with kids. Well, you're clearly intentional parents. There's a buzz in the room. I already feel it. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to pray because God's going to use this buzz that we've got going on here, and he's here with us. So let's go ahead and pray. God, thank you so much for your goodness to us, for the way you do journey with us, that we're not alone in this journey of parenthood, that clearly we understand it's a hard task. We're not naive at this juncture. And so we ask for your wisdom. We ask that you would just be in this place, be honored as we seek to try and be the best we can be. And ultimately we know that your grace is sufficient and we're gonna need moments of grace. And God, we just ask that you'd use this morning, that you would help us to think about those things as parents, those places where we can grow, those places where we can be intentional and take some time to plan our conversations with kids, and that that you would know our desire is to honor you. So be in this space, be honored and glorified in Christ's name, amen. Just a few logistical pieces about this morning. It's a chunk of time, so feel free to get up. Fill your coffee mug, treat yourself. There's yummy treats over there. There's a restroom right down the hall if you need to use that, so I will not be offended if you get up, move around, stand up. I was joking because last year I was having some hip issues, and so I actually was in a meeting and I was on my knees because I was like, I cannot sit anymore. So I was joking with them. But feel free to get up. Seriously, this is too long to sit. I move around a lot. Sitting in a chair, for me, I'd rather sit on the floor with kids or stand up. So just trust, it'll be just great. So thank you for your intentionality of being here. And I just thought it would be interesting for a moment. On the table, there are some little Postit notes. You can take those to jot down things. There's some note pages there. And I thought it would be interesting. This whole series is about, this talk is about how to raise kids who thrive. Okay, super intimidating topic, by the way, right? Super intimidating. But I thought it'd be interesting if we could just imagine for a minute your kids sort of at the end, think of them at like ages 18. Does anybody have any launched kids in the room? I have a son who's turning 20 in a couple days. Crazy. So he's off and away. But think about them at that age. Think about your kids right now. And what does thriving look like? Jot down a few words for a second. Just imagine, what would they be doing? What are some adjectives for thriving? What does thriving look like? So we probably all have different ideas of what thriving looks like. Anybody want to share some of the things that they wrote down?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I just had 4 things down. So I said confidence, self-sufficient, strong social skills, and curious with the desire to learn.
Oh, I love that. Wouldn't that be great if our kids had those things? Does anybody want to share just one? Happy, yeah. Anybody else have happy on there? Oh, that's a big task. But yeah, we want our kids to be happy. Yeah.
Long-term goals.
Yeah, that they would be on a path towards their long-term goals and passions. Yeah. Eager to embrace the world. I love it. Sort of compassion for those around them. Yeah. I love it. Identity, solid identity in the Lord. Yeah. Anything else? Pretty powerful. Well, really the way I'd like to set today up is I'm going to share a little bit, and then I want to give you a little bit of reflection time, because actually the reflection time is the hardest, right? Sometimes that's the hardest to get, because we're trying to soak in and absorb and learn. But I want to give you some time to actually think about, what could I take away? Like, what do I think about where I could go? Not just some ideas from a talk, you know what I mean? How can I implement this? So we're going to have some time of maybe sharing a little bit from up here. I'll share, and then I will give you some time after each little bit to think about, how can I implement this? How can I put it into practice? What are some struggles that I'm having right now? So thanks for being willing to do that. Plus, it'll keep us engaged a little bit. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I know some of you, some familiar faces, but for those of you that are new, my name's Kristen Gephart. I have been married to my best friend Jeff for 25 years. We just celebrated our anniversary this summer. We have 2 boys. Alex is, he's our almost 20-year-old. So that's kind of crazy. And then TJ is here at this school. So Alex graduated a couple years ago from here, and TJ is in our upper school. He is in 10th grade, so he is 16 and driving and very independent. So we're sort of in this new season of life where we are doing a lot of reflecting on our parenting. And I have to say, honestly, man, I've made a ton of mistakes. And there's spaces where we'll be in a conversation, I'll be like, oh no, I didn't prepare you there. Or like, oh, this is such a weakness. Or, oh, I did a lot for you in that area and now you don't know how to do it. And so we're doing a lot of reflecting and a lot of how do we do this parenting journey at this stage? Because we're always parents, we're gonna be parents forever. And we wanna transition into sort of those adult friend parents where they actually come to you on their own accord. And so that's the stage that we're in. So I'm just in it with you. Definitely not an expert. I've picked up tips and tricks from people that I work with. I was a teacher, and so having kids, I had a lot of actual pride. I thought, I am gonna be good at this. And it wasn't, it took like 2 weeks, And the way Jeff and I both learn is we are book readers. That's our favorite way. And so it was 2 o'clock in the morning. We had no idea what we were doing, and we had like 20 books out on the table, and we're kind of snipping each other. We're like, this one says this. We're supposed to do this. And this book says this. And Jeff would read, and he'd be like, no, okay, this one says if you keep them in their room for a while and you let the, and I'm like, but he's crying, or we're supposed to keep the door shut. He's trying to get out of the room. So anyway, we've got these books spread all out, and it's super hard what we're doing, what we're in the middle of. So I think there's no experts. Everybody who does parenting expert books, probably they're experts only because they've messed up a lot. So I'm in this with you, and in terms of conversation, which we're going to talk about later, I'm definitely evaluating that all the time. And so some of these, as I was preparing for this talk, I was realizing I'm giving this tip because I really need it myself, and I don't do this well. So that's where we are. I've been here at the Bear Creek School a decade, and we have found that one of the things that helps us be great parents is being in a community of great parents, parents who care about their kids. We're all broken, we all mess up, but being in a community where we can share, and the person standing next to you, you can say, how did that go for you? Has been really, really helpful to be in community. Okay, I think I need to move quicker. Now I have to type in my long password. Okay. Well, so I thought we would start with the fact that with kids in this age, this 0 to 10 years of age, we really shape our kids' desires. We have a really unique opportunity developmentally to shape the things that they love. And I love this book. This is by James Smith. I highly recommend it. It's called You Are What You Love. And he's an academic, he's a professor, but the beautiful thing about it is it talks about the habits that we have in life, and this should be on your little packet too. I don't know if you can read that title, but his name is James K.A. Smith. And how can we be intentional about the habits that we display in our life? Because ultimately, our kids catch who we are. And so that's kind of interesting. We clearly influence our kids. Do any of your kids have some of the same passions that you have? Anybody have lessons that you had when you were kids? Anybody probably have your kids play sports? So we influence our kids with what we value. And so, my boys get up and occasionally they'll sit, and our older one, he watches Game Day because Dad watched Game Day on Saturday mornings. They're probably both watching it right now, the recorded version. So we definitely value, it's clear that we do this. It's clear that we influence who our kids are. And so here's a little funny video. Watch this. Okay, sometimes we're crazy. And now watch the adults around. They are so proud of him, aren't they? So just kind of silly, but it does show that is what happens, right? We are passionate, they catch our passion, and they jump in too. So what are those things that we value naturally, and we're giving to them without even any words, with just who we are? And so that's probably the biggest part of parenting. We love Seahawks, we love jazz music, and we actually delight in watching them delight in their passions. I was just telling some friends, we have our older son, our younger son, he's had a second ACL replacement, and so he's not playing any sports. And I have to say, it's so sad to not get to watch him, because he loves to be in a competitive environment. And we delight in watching him delight. And so that's why Who's yelling on the soccer field? Who's at every single music concert, right? Because we delight, and I think that's just what God does for us. He watches us delight in delighting in our kids because he delights in us. So anyway, I just think it's a really important concept to just go, who are we? Because that's who we're going to give to our kids regardless. So when we think about what are the essential elements for helping kids thrive, Laura Kastner, we had her come, Dr. Kastner came a couple times actually to our school, and she shared with us. She writes great books. I believe there's one in the back, in the library. I think it's Wise-Minded Parenting that might be back there, or Getting to Calm. And she directs a lot of her stuff towards the preteen, teenage years. But these are the things that she says for happy, healthy kids. I know some of us had happy on our list of what thriving looks like. But having that secure attachment to parents, that's when they run up and hug you physically, but then emotionally, they're doing that same thing. And these are those ages where we develop those secure attachments. Having self-control. They don't need us to be in control. As kids walk down the hallways at our school and they're calm and their body's in their own space, we try and affirm, doesn't that feel so good to have such self-control? Because it does feel good to be in control of yourself. Kids don't want to be out of control. They really don't. And when they're out of control, they're actually asking for us to help them. Academic success. So that's a big one for us. We said, so there were some assignments that our older son just wouldn't turn in. He would do them and just not turn them in. And for Jeff and I, we're like, what on earth? Like, how can you do an assignment and not turn it in? And my husband's dad has been a developmental pediatrician and worked in the mental health field with them. And he'd be like, well, what other way for a teenager to rebel against two educators than to not turn in their homework? So that was a huge space of emphasis for us. Just that academic success, we want them to be doing well there. Social thriving, we want them to have great friends and be in great community, have emotional thriving, strong character, and then physical health as well. So we're whole people. And so thinking about our kids as whole people, we all have probably one of those is more important to you than some of the others. There's probably one that would rise to the top for you, or the areas that you think about all the time, or the things that you're planning. So trying to think of our kiddos in their whole space. So I think we have to be, I say you either are intentional or you're reactional. And I'm not naturally a huge planner, except for my job. But in my personal life, like to go with the flow. But I think we have to be intentional with our actions and our words, our prayers and our plans. And because otherwise we're going to react. There's going to be something that comes up. So the more intentional we can be, the better. Those areas, like I said, the areas where we want our kids to thrive, and that's our area of thought all the time, like, okay, I really want them to get into the best school so they can get into the best college, so they can have success, so they can be able to provide for themselves, so they can be happy. So if that's our train of thought, we're definitely going to be intentional about how to help them get there. So think about our kids as a whole. How can I help them be as physically healthy as possible? What kind of habits do I want them to have? So being intentional. Okay, this is a really big task. And so at this point, you start to feel overwhelmed because you're like, oh my goodness, I have to be so intentional about all the areas of their lives. What am I going to do? So on the little notes page in there is a list of things where kids, let's see. Must have gone through it. Is there a list of things of emotion words? Okay, go back to that emotion words. And so in there, right here. What are you feeling right now? Circle them. Because it's kind of overwhelming. And I think to acknowledge the fact that this is a really big job is important. What do we feel when we think about the job of parenting? It's a really big job, and so when we think about that we're passing on our values, I will say, and I'll repeat it again, if we are the healthiest that we can be, that's going to be the healthiest for our kids. So that's just to acknowledge these feelings, I think, is really important as parents, and it's okay to feel those things. And every other parent is feeling those things, but they're not going to necessarily tell you that when you first meet them. So we definitely need each other because there's no right way to do that. So for the rest of today, we're going to talk about conversation hacks. And we have some dear friends that are here, and our friend Greg, he's like, I don't like that word hack. It's so out there everywhere. And I was like, I know, because actually there's no hacks really, right? It's just wisdom. And so, and nothing comes easy. But the idea is that there are some tools that we can use. So when we think about what it is that we value, a lot of that happens with our actions. Our actions really do speak loudest. One of the things that we really value as a family is we value our family, our extended family. When we lived in California when our kids were born, and so we would travel a lot. Every vacation was to see family. And so our kids knew that their aunts and uncles and cousins, like they were really important people to us, so we would travel a lot. Reading in our family, really highly valued, because that's the way Jeff and I love to learn. We're inspired, we're motivated, we're brought to tears through our author mentors. And so, we had cozy family book nights, or Dad would have a meeting and he was gone all night. So what would we do? We would just say, okay, we're getting our jammies at 4 this afternoon, and we're gonna have dinner by the fire, and you get your stack of books. And so all that stuff that we do just transfers to value. We also enjoy sports, and so our kids enjoy sports. We enjoy being in community and pursuing our faith together. And so we'd have small groups at our house, and we would go to other people's house for times of studying scripture and God's word and community. So those things speak a lot of volume. So when we think about specifically our conversations, we know that is one little slice of how we help our kids to thrive. What it is that we talk about, what it is that we are choosing to spend a lot of our conversation at the dinner table, at bedtime. What are we talking to our kids about? What are they hearing from our voices repeatedly? So our talk, the conversation we pursue, does communicate what we value. What are the things we talk about over and over again? When we lived in California, my husband was a pastor of college ministry and missions, and I worked in children's ministry. And our head of staff, every week at our staff meeting, he'd start the day, who'd you meet? And so after a while, after the question was, who'd you meet? We got to meet some more people. So because every week, who'd you meet? And so, and we were in the process of growing a church from 300 to close to 1,000 people in a really short time, and it all was about who'd you meet? And so how do we welcome new people? And so those little questions that we ask all the time, those are the things that get in our heads, and it then influences behavior. So what are the questions that we're asking? What are the things that we're saying repeatedly? How many of you, the please and thank you thing, I think you guys are probably all in that stage, right? Unfortunately, I was wired with this really quick response time. And so I want people to say it immediately. And so what happened was I would just, somebody would give them a gift, and I'd say, hey, thank you. I didn't even give them a chance. And still to this day, I'll look at them and I'm like, I'm doing it. And so because I know that my response I just want it to come quicker. Like, oh, thank you so much. But most people need a little more time than me. But again, those things that we say over and over again, please and thank you, and our kids do get it eventually because we say it for them. So, number 1, and this is my very favorite hack of the whole thing, determine when to avoid trying to have a conversation. Because this is probably the most important. Sometimes we talk when talk is not needed. And sometimes we use our words, and then they start tuning us out. And there's a couple things that we know in conversations. If we're not ready to be present with them, we probably just shouldn't try and talk or teach, and what are those things that kids need at this age? Gosh, they need us to be able to look them in the eye. They need us to be calm. They need us to be able to be in a space where we can really focus on them when it's something important. There are so many distractions in this world, and And they say even like the presence of this, even the presence of this for our kids, they pick up on it. They know, even if it's on the table. What do they say? I think research is showing that, that when there's a phone on the table, people are automatically, they're not as connected because they know that there's something else going to happen. So I try and turn mine over, things like that. But it's really tough because we get into habits. And I am a huge fan of multitasking, even though it's been proven to not be effective. But I remember playing, I remember trying to have a conversation because my son Alex was super extroverted. I remember like going, okay, and now the superheroes, they're gonna empty the dishwasher. And so we would have these conversations, and all in good fun. But how much can we multitask, really? But some, trying to think creatively about, we can't always sit and look at our kids eye to eye, face to face, but when are those times when it's important? But determine when it's, some other times that it's important not to have a conversation is when action is needed. And so if we can remove ourselves from the conversation so we don't become the nag, where we're saying the same things over and over, I have a little tool for you, and maybe Rachel, you can help us pass these out. So these are called I'm Ready tickets, and I think there's, maybe take one and pass them down. So with this I'm Ready ticket, I've used this, and I actually still kind of use it with my sophomore. It just is not a ticket anymore. It's just a list, but he's just used to it. So where are those places and spaces in our day that are stressful, and we don't have time to talk about it, and we actually want them to keep hearing our voice, so we want to say things less. So the yellow one is an example of a way to get your voice out of it. So this is a really simple trick. If you have little kids, they do love it. So this is Alex's I'm Ready ticket. And can I borrow yours for a second? And so when Alex was done in the morning with this, he'd take a hole punch, super fun. Because if you let them mark it off with a pen, not quite as, they're going to mark it all off. So you have a hole punch, and they go through, I did this one, and so they mark off what they've done. And so if Alex was sitting sitting on the couch reading a book, because he would just pull his book out, I'd be like, hey, show me your ticket. And so that it removes me from the stuff. He knows what to do. And so if you can create something like this together, that can be really helpful. This is just a Word document, columns on there. So if you've already talked about it and they know the expectation, try and remove yourself from that. Because how many times, did you brush your teeth? Did you really brush your teeth? And so again, like, what are the things that we can extract ourselves out and take our voice out of it? Because they'll just be like, oh, well, she'll remind me. And so as much as possible to write it down. The hole punch works for those kids that are kinesthetic. So for our son TJ, very kinesthetic, loved it. Alex was really auditory, so actually he did respond to the auditory stuff. But again, like, I don't want to be the bumpers always. Like, no, you start to build independence, that self-control, the self-efficacy there. So that's just a fun thing. And what we did, you'll notice on the yellow one, there's some spaces at the bottom. I'd just print out a bunch. That would have like basketball on there, like things that he needed to pack in his bags. They can change over time. As they got older, we had vision statements on there and like goals, things like that. But again, trying to put things in there that will help support them. Like, oh yeah, you have library on Tuesday, so on Monday night, you got to put it in your backpack. So trying to give them tools and model ways that they can think independently. Also, times not to talk is when we have high emotions or when they have high emotions. Proverbs 15 verse 1 says this, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. When we're able to be gentle and calm, that's when we're going to have our best conversations. If we can have a calm body, a calm face, a calm voice, then we're ready to have a conversation. I was coaching my son's soccer team, and there was this one little boy. It's a distinct story in our family because they'll be like, oh yeah, remember Robbie? And sweet Robbie, like he wanted to argue with me because all he wanted to do was scrimmage. And they were in 3rd grade at the time, and I was like, Robbie, we're gonna scrimmage. He's like, but blah, 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 and he would just talk and they'd cry. And I said, oh, Robbie, okay, come sit right down here. And I was teaching 3rd graders all day. And so that I'd go and coach a different group of 3rd graders. And I'm pulling out all my tools. Okay, Robbie, I'm gonna talk to you when your voice is like mine. And I'd walk away. And I'd be, you ready? Yeah, I'm ready, okay. And then he'd start yelling at me, high emotion. I'd be like, Robbie, I'm gonna talk to you when your voice is like mine. And I'd walk away. But we can use that with our kids too, because it's not gonna be helpful to try and engage them. If they're emotional, if we're emotional, we can't do our best thinking. So when we're able to be calm, that's when our best thinking occurs. And then timing. When they're tired, when we're tired, we're not going to do our best thinking. And we're talking about, obviously, conversations that are a little bit more high stakes. Pete, is there something? Oh, there we go. There are also, one more thing. There are also things that are not really kid decisions. And I think if we're giving our kids lots of choices, oh, what color shirt would you like to wear today, blue or red? Would you like to empty the dishwasher first, or would you like to, clean up your toys? Giving them lots and lots of choices. Hey, do you want to do your homework now, or do you want to take a little break? They have tons and tons of choices, but there are some choices that we don't give kids. And I think sometimes we get into conversations that aren't really conversations that they need to be a part of. So I think just simply stopping to talk about it and just going, guess what, this is a mom decision. This is a dad decision. And so not engaging those things where there shouldn't really be a conversation. So that's just my very favorite one right here, because I think that we often just talk and they like to get us in that circular conversation pattern. Has that happened to anyone in this room? Yes, look around, lots of nods. So I think that it's very, very common for us to get in those conversations, circular things, when it's not effective for whatever reason, whether we're emotional, whether it's not a topic for them, or when action is needed. We talk a lot. And our verbal kids, our extroverted kids that process out loud, they really want to engage us in that conversation because that's helping them think. And sometimes we just need to listen, but not to go around. So later on, I'm going to do a conversation on love and logic, which I think is really powerful. And that's when you really do go brain dead, and you'll say to your kids, no, like I did with Robbie, oh, I'll talk to you when your voice is like mine. I'll talk to you when your voice is like mine. And so what are those things that we can just say, hey, this is an adult decision. This is an adult decision. And don't get into it, because it's just not worth it for them. But they'll want to talk about it. The next one is be intentional with our language habits. So the habits are, we have to talk to our children and not at them. And so they know the difference. I can be really bad at this because I have a lot to share with you. So, I will talk and talk and talk, and I'm not talking to them, I'm just talking at them. So I work on this a lot. And then we need to listen to them so that they feel like they're being heard and understood. And then what are our habits of conversation? I love this quote. Karen Furminger shared this with me, and I actually found it on a plaque. It's now in my house. Eleanor Roosevelt, this is her quote. She says, great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. Let me say it again, because it's really super powerful. Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. So when you're unpacking a scenario with your kiddos about a friendship issue, you're actually talking about an event. We're not talking about people. And I think that changes the way we frame. We're problem solving with them, and we're actually moving it to the idea realm of what strategy could I give my child in this social event that they could take with them? And that's more the idea realm. So do you see the difference versus I'm just going to talk about you and this other child? Because stuff's going to come up in community. But how is it that we can really shape them with the patterns of where we move the conversation towards? I had a friend where she was struggling with, her son was struggling with another kiddo, and the conversation began. All the time the question was, So what happened today with him? So what happened today with him? And so the conversation really got focused. So it's like the question that our boss asked us at our church in California, who'd you meet? The conversation, well, what happened with him today? And it got to be this negative spiral. And so what happened was the child started going to school, noticing everything that he did to everyone else. And so that was the pattern. That was the area of focus, because that was what was expected. So my friend, we worked with another friend of ours. She's a therapist, and we were just talking through it. And so she kind of gave us some tools, and she said, well, actually, let's move it to the problem-solving stage. Like, what would you do if this happened today? And so it was more tool-focused versus person-focused. So we do have to be intentional with our language habits. One of the things that we sort of started to implement, and we have this birthday ritual, and if you go to a birthday party with me, this is the question you're gonna get. What are your highlights and lowlights? And so people prepare, they know, but we tried to implement at our family dinner table the MSG, and we call it mad, sad, glad. What are you mad about, sad about, glad about? And then that gave us opportunity to introduce some of the other emotion language. Oh, that sounds like you were frustrated. That must have been hard. And so to broaden their emotional intellect a little bit, to be able to name those things. So we called it the MSG, mad, sad, glad. One of the things my dad said every night when he tucked me in, he'd say, hey, sleep good, God bless you. And to this day, that just sits with me so heavy. He was very intentional about it. Even as a teenager, we wouldn't have talked all day because I'd have been mad, whatever, close the door. He'd just pop in, hey, sleep good, God bless you. So powerful. We want our kids to work hard and know that work is enjoyable, and yet sometimes we talk and we say things in a way that makes it feel like the work itself stinks. So we'll say things like this, hey, if you finish your work early, you won't have to do any more work. But isn't that true? I was talking with my parents, and my parents will often say to their friends, hey, take it easy, as if like easy is like the best way to go. And that's really hard, right? Or we'll say to our kids, oh, that's easy for you, like congratulations. But we don't want our kids to do easy things. So we really do have to analyze, because those things will sneak into our conversations really quickly. No, we know about grit. We want our kids to be gritty. We want them to work hard. And so I will say now to our kids, I'll be like, this is good hard work. Or like, and our attitude towards our own work will really influence how they think about their work too. If we only value free time, they're going to value only free time. And so then what are they going to do? Like, I'm just trying to get my assignment done versus do the learning. If we say, hey, did you get your homework finished? What are they going to do? They're going to try and get their homework finished. Just get it done. That's what we value. We value getting it done, which is true, right? But what'd you learn? Hey, what are you learning? I don't really care if you got your homework finished. What'd you learn? Do you learn anything? So how do we be intentional with our language habits? And then we want our kids to behave well, because it just naturally feels good to behave well. But then sometimes what happens is we'll add a lot of rewards or big things that they're working towards, and we've got elaborate systems in place. And behavior modification actually works if kids are struggling with something, if we can focus it. But if it's about everything, if everything has a reward attached to it or a threat, then we're actually saying, you don't intrinsically really want to value this. You're going to value it because somebody else wants you to. So sorry about this. I should have extended my screen bit. Okay, so let's stop for a second. Take a Post-it note. So think about these things. Determine when to avoid having conversations, and being intentional about our conversations, our language habits. Any language, let's just think for a minute, and if you don't think of anything, that's great. But think about some things that maybe your spouse says, because oftentimes it's easier to identify it in our spouse than in ourselves. And so think about, or friends that you've heard. Are there some phrases that you're like, let me think about that for a second, and share it with them, because sometimes we don't know. And ask them to do the same for you. are there things that I say that aren't really about what we value? Just think about it for a minute. What's that? Sure. Thanks. Feel free to get up, get some coffee, move your body for a second. Everyone needs a break. They say at about this time, people start to fall asleep. Don't want that to happen. Thank you. Vision, goals, habit. Yeah, feel free to keep milling about. So these past two things that we're looking at, those are the largest ones. When not to talk, and when to be, and then being really intentional about what we talk about. What are those things that are super important to us that we want to make sure we have conversations about? And it's not just going to be one, right? So those are the two biggest ones. These next ones will go a little bit faster. Okay, so we all repeat the, hey, say please, say thank you. We want our kids to be polite. So we want we want to keep saying over and over again those things that we actually do want them to remember. And we do it naturally, but if we can keep it short and sweet, one of the things that I will say, because I work a lot with 5 and 6-year-olds, and self-control is one of those things they're just developing. So we will say a lot, body in your own space. Hey, body in your own space. Body in your own space. Doesn't it feel good to have body in your own space? Doesn't it feel good to have self-control? So we'll say that again and again, because 5 and 6-year-olds, it's hard, It's hard. Whack. So we'll also say, we like to start things in our family. I don't know about you, but we have projects that have been started. So for a while, we always said, hey, Gephart's finished the project. This was like a vision statement. It was definitely, Gephart's finished the project. Or we'll say, hey, you know what? So there'd be a little bit of conversation about, I don't want to go to his game. Hey, Gepharts support one another. Gepharts support one another. So repeat the things that you want to remember that really point to your values. That's another one there. And then speak what you want. Those are all examples of what we want. So as much as possible, we try not to speak the negative. So if we say, don't chew with your mouth open. Oh, chew with your mouth closed. And our school, we work really hard to get in their brains. Again, it's a little bit the repeat to remember. But hey, walking feet, please. It's much easier to go, don't run. But hey, walking feet, because you want to point them towards the positive. Point them towards what they want, what you want them to do, because it gives them the vision of what it is that you're asking them to do. Our greetings in the morning, I really feel like God knows each of our names. He knows us as individuals. And so we work really hard at our school to greet in the morning. And so I work super hard to know all the kids' names. I don't necessarily know parents. I know they belong to, but so that I can say in the morning, oh, good morning, William. So good to see you. And when a kiddo looks at me and they'll say, hey, good morning, Mrs. Gephart, because they know that that's important to me. But it's actually a really valuable skill to be able to name somebody and greet them. And so those are the things that, again, we're modeling it, we repeat it, and speak what it is that you want. And then name it when they do it. I will say that, oh, thank you so much for saying my name. You just said my name and you made me feel so special. So to tell them what they're doing that's well. And then sharing gratitude. If they hear you speaking words of gratitude, oh, I'm so grateful for X, Y, and Z. Or wow, your teacher went to all that effort. I'm so grateful. When they hear you talk that way, they're going to repeat it, and they're going to do that same thing. Speak what it is you want. So if you're giving your child directions, ask them to repeat it, because then you're helping them with a strategy to own it. Because sometimes they'll hear, we don't always have time to make things like this. So it's like, no, I need you to go upstairs and get your suitcase, and I also need you to shut off your light. Okay, before you go, what are you going to do? I'm going to grab my suitcase, I'm going to shut off the light. Go. When they come down, what'd you do? I grab my suitcase, and I shut off the light. You shut off the light? I shut off the light. Okay, we're good. So speaking what you want. And then this is a really interesting one, because I think that we have to help our kids model the inner dialogue that happens in their head, because they don't know what to think sometimes. And so we have to model that. Let them, we have maturity, and so we know what to think, sort of sometimes. But let them see you struggle with your thinking. If somebody cuts in front of you, oh man, that's a bummer. That wasn't very kind. All right, maybe they're having a rough day. I can let it roll off, So they see you manage your own emotion in it. So if you're just real with them, sometimes we're afraid to model the hard stuff, but then what actually is happening is we're modeling that nothing ever happens, or that there's no rough bumps, or there's not hard spots in our lives. And so if we can talk through those with our kids, man, I had a really hard day at work today. I was talking with a colleague, and actually, you know what? I was not as kind as I could have been. I was kind of snappy, and I'd come out of a really hard meeting, but it doesn't make it okay. So if we can talk through that stuff and be vulnerable and honest with them, then they can go, oh, mom struggles with that too. Dad struggles with that too. And so if we can model that with them. And then I do direct instruction, because we know that direct instruction is really, really helpful in kids' lives. They need to know what to do. I am a huge fan of note cards for kiddos that have internal dialogue. So my kids literally had in their room note cards that would say, oh, bummer, that didn't go the way I wanted it. Versus like, hey, that's mine, quack. I have two boys, they're a little physical. But what is it we want them to do instead? And so to model that inner thinking of what are the things that we can let roll off? Well, that was not nice. Ugh. But that's inside talk. And so we, even at school, we'll have kids in my office, and for like trying to help them develop a voice when they're frustrated about something. So we'll write it in a note card, and we'll say, hey, will you practice that with me? Or we have a bear sometimes, role play a little bit. But that idea of like, hey, I don't like that. Stop. To model the talk, but also it models like, oh, I don't like that. Stop. And then they go, oh, stop. To model what is it that could be happening inside their brains. And it basically helps develop their emotional intelligence. How are they handling issues? We use a lot of like, hey, next time I might get to go first. Versus like, hey, I want to go first. Well, yeah, everyone wants to go first. But maybe next time. One of the things we can say inside our head so it doesn't come out ugly. They need some help with that. And then this gets really tough, especially when we're emotional, is to focus on one thing. Because we want to lay it all out. Like, this has been a terrible day. You didn't share with your sister. You wouldn't eat. You're not listening. You're not. But to focus on what is the one thing. So Jeff and I, when we would have conversations, when our kids were really little, be like, what's the one thing we're going to focus on? Because there's so much, right? These are little humans, and we know we're broken, and we know we're fallen, and sometimes we expect so much. But what's the one thing we can focus on? Our teachers, when we're working on writing with our students, man, oh man, we could create a college paper out of those papers, but whose work would that be? We're working with elementary school kids. How can we help them focus on that one thing? Oh my goodness, can you make that beginning pop for your reader? Go back and see if you can make that beginning pop. And so if we can focus on the one thing. I get terrible at this, especially with teenagers, because I think they should know. And then they're just like, because I'm not helpful at that point. I'm just laying it on them thick. So ultimately it's a power trip. Like it's I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm more powerful than you. But if we can focus on one thing, that's going to be the most helpful. And then this one's hard, the coach versus takeover. This one's really, really tough. That little picture up there, that's a dugout. At this age, as much as possible with our kids in these ages, try and be in the dugout. There is a season for being on the field with them and walking them to the position. Remember, those sweet, sweet, sweet ages. But we want to be in the dugout as quickly as possible. We want to coach from the side and want them to look for us, occasionally. But if we stay in it with them, they're not going to develop those skills. If we always sit right next to our kiddo to do homework, because that helps them focus, they're always going to need us to sit right next to them as they do their homework. And they're not going to develop those independent attack skills. It's really okay for them to fail at this age. And that seems really hard because when we really want them to thrive and be happy, we don't want them to fail. So it's hard. It's like this decision in the moment. How can I help my kiddo grow? And I'm going to let them fail this time? Some of you have heard this over and over and over again because perpetual problem in our house, still to this day. Sleeping in, not getting up on time, super hard in our family. It's hard for me. But we've left our kids at the home when they didn't have a car, and now we have drivers, so that's a lot of loss of privileges if you don't get to school on time. And so we're still in that struggle a little bit, But as much as I can help just coach, because I can't take over at this point. I mean, I can. Occasionally be like, you lose your car, now you got to come with me really early. So really practicing strategies that are going to help push them towards personal self-efficacy, right? Not just success in that moment. They will be okay if they forgot their lunch at school. They will be okay if they're wearing the wrong uniform and they have to deal with it for the day. They will be okay if they have to wear the wrong socks to soccer practice. They'll be okay, but it feels funny. And then sometimes we have to get out of the way too because it's kind of embarrassing, right? Oh, great mom she is. She forgot to bring, But we have to get out of that, because actually we're doing our kids a favor if we let them just struggle through. And we would talk to our kids all the time about flexible thinking. If we can't have flexible thinking and just kind of let things roll, we're going to break. So when we want to team with them and not take over. And then we want to take situational opportunities to talk about issues. I remember TJ was in preschool. Yeah, I was in preschool, and Alex was in second grade. And I remember we were just about to go to a basketball game that Alex had. He was all in his uniform. I was the snack mom. So I had everything ready. We're just about to head the door. Let's go there. And Alex was like, well, how are babies made? And I was like, that seems like a really important time. And questions, because we talked about it before, but all of a sudden, for whatever reason, that was the time. And so I said, that is a great question. And we just sat there at the bar. TJ got early education, and we just talked about it because it was the time. We have to take those opportunities. Or when our kids, it's way past their bedtime, and all of a sudden they want to be philosophical. Now, my family, they learned that we can use that as a strategy to get mom to let us stay up later. But if they really start to go, oh, why would God do that? Be like, ooh, You know, I mean, those are gold moments. So take those opportunities when they're asking you, because long term, that's what you want. That you want them to come back to you, to say, how do I do this? And then ultimately be the healthiest version of ourselves in conversation and being honest. Because when we are, when we're part of a relationship, they'll pick up if we're not being real. And as healthy again as we can be, they're gonna get that too. So taking time, like, well done, you guys. Like, well done to take a morning to just try and to learn and grow and to think about your parenting. Because when we care for ourselves, it is caring for our kids. It truly is. Rachel, do you have any words of wisdom from this conversation here? Because Rachel is our preschool division head, and she just has tons of wisdom. I learn every time I hear from Rachel. So.
I just think Kristen brought so many great truths to just ponder, I think, even as we're thinking through things as in your individual parenting. One of the things that she was talking about coaching versus taking over is I thought about a lot of with our own kids and then coming up to us and saying things like yesterday. I was actually in a conversation with Kristen and my son ran up and he was like, Mom, I'm so sorry I'm late. I just realized I have an assignment that was due, but don't worry, my history teacher told me if I got it in at the end of the day today, we could still get full credit. And I was like, in my head, I wanted to be like, but you told me last night you didn't have any homework. I wanted to like chew him out. I wanted to be like, rrr, and I was like, everything in me made me go, well, great problem solving, Titus. That was great. I wanted inside though, I was seriously like, wait, you told me you didn't have any homework. So I feel like that coaching part, and I feel like that pertains so much even to, I know there's lots of people in here with younger kids too, and I feel like those opportunities to just send them out onto that field is super important. I was thinking of Dave, who I'm sitting next to, and his little girl who's at our preschool, we went to do picture time for picture day, and we're bringing in the kids and do pictures, and pictures at preschool, you know, they're like cheese, they're like trying to like, we want smile, the photographer's trying to say, they're like, you know, trying to do their best, you know, with it, but it's like letting them go in there. And I was thinking of his daughter and how when she went in there at first, she was really timid with it, and it's like sending our kids off to school, right? It's a new environment. It's how do they navigate this, learn on their own? And yet here she watched someone go before, and then I watched her confidently get on the stool and do her little smile. And I thought, that's giving them independence, right? That's putting them out into the field when you're sending them to places that are safe environments like here, and letting them have opportunities to go, I can do that. I can build that confidence. So that was a big takeaway from when Kristen was saying that. And I love also how it made me think of too, you can't make your child do anything, right? We can't make our children do exactly what we want them to do, but we can help manage that process for them. And so I also thought of that. Made me think of another story for my own family. We hop in the car oftentimes in the morning time, just like Kristen, I would say is like the worst time for our family. And as we're going into the car, I was thinking of our daughter, and we get to school, and we live 40 minutes away from the school. So we live a significant distance from the school. And we get here, and she's like, Mom, I forgot my shoes. And I am like, no. And she's like, what do I do? I'm like, well, look in the back, see if we have a pair of extra shoes. Of course, I know, I'm like in my head, no, we don't. And then I'm like, oh, your PE shoes. I wore my PE shoes home a few days ago when they're at the house. And she's on the verge of meltdown. I'm like, okay, well, what else could we do? So she came up with, well, my brother has PE shoes, so I can wear my brother's shoes that don't fit. Good solution. What can we do then to help manage that? So letting them, again, just own it. Now, I will say, 2 weeks later in the car, get her, and what does she say to me? Mom, I forgot my shoes. I was like, no. But letting her own that, and I'll tell you, after she did it 3 times last year, 3 times. She's in 5th grade, 3 times. And what was amazing, though, is after that third time, I was like, wow, she has not forgotten her shoes since. And so just letting them experience that failure sometimes, or those struggles sometimes. I know it's hard as a parent. I know we talked about that word happy, but in those struggles, in those opportunities where it's not gonna go perfectly, are opportunities for them to really shine too. So those were some things I was thinking when you were talking, Kristen.
Thanks, Rachel. So this is one of my favorite little videos. I've used it in many different contexts. And the reason why is because this job of parenting is so, so hard. And so this little boy is having some situations. All these situations. Can't carry it all.
I think you lost somebody in the woods, Leonard. What's wrong?
Lost the situation.
Isn't that like parenting? We feel like we've done a really good job and then there's another situation. And I think that's the way it is, right? It's not a one and done. It's not like you can complete the task of parenting or just say, oh, okay, now we've got good dinner conversation under our wing, check. It's so, so hard, and it's nonstop, and then they change, or then there's a different struggle at school, or you think you've got them on a track where they have like this beautiful vision for how they're gonna handle X, Y, and Z, and they come home and with like the reverse opposite, like how'd that go? Oh, it's terrible. So it's just this constant process and situation. So if we can have that perspective and know that that's the case, then it's not so disappointing. Or we don't try and be so controlling, because we can't control them. I mean, they're just little kittens with situations everywhere, And that's us too, and being honest about that. So I think that just allows us the freedom to be real and to be honest and to just love them in a way that we acknowledge that life can be really, really hard. And if we can team together with each other and with our friends, and we just keep trying, and we know, like with God's help, that He really does want to just share with us how much He loves us and then the beautiful plan He has for our lives. So I'm really super proud of who you are for being here today. Give yourselves a great pat on the back. So well done, and thank you so much for coming. Appreciate all your time. I'm going to bring Michelle on up, and she's going to share a little bit. Oh, I did want to share here. These next bits, are you going to talk about these already too? Okay, perfect. Yep, go for it, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Kristen and Rachel.